The coffee cup slipped from Zara's fingers and shattered on the kitchen floor, sending brown liquid across the white tiles like spilled blood. She stood frozen, staring at her phone screen, reading the text message that had just destroyed her world. The words burned into her mind. "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Tell your wife you're working late again. Love you more than anything, Jenna." The message wasn't meant for her. It was meant for her husband of 12 years, Robert. But his phone had died that morning and he'd grabbed hers by mistake, forgetting to switch the numbers in his contacts. Now every secret, every lie, every stolen moment was laid bare in front of her. Zara's hands shook as she scrolled up through the conversation. Months of messages. Months of planning secret meetings. Months of laughing about how stupid his wife was, how she never suspected anything. Her stomach turned as she read Jenna's words. "She's so boring compared to you. I don't know how you stand going home to her every night." Robert's response made her knees weak. "Don't worry, baby. Once I figure out the divorce, it'll just be you and me. She'll never see it coming." The sound of keys jingling outside snapped Zara back to reality. Robert was home from work. She quickly deleted the evidence of her discovery and placed the phone back where she'd found it. When he walked through the door with his usual tired smile, kissing her cheek like he had every day for the past 12 years, she wanted to scream. Instead, she smiled back and asked about his day. "Same old stuff," he said, loosening his tie. "Might have to work late tomorrow though. Big project coming up." "Of course," Zara said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "I'll save you some dinner." That night, as Robert slept peacefully beside her, Zara stared at the ceiling. She thought about their wedding day, how handsome he'd looked in his black suit, how he'd promised to love and honor her forever. She thought about the house they'd bought together, the dreams they'd shared, the life they'd built. And she thought about Jenna, the 24-year-old intern who had waltzed into their accounting firm 6 months ago with her bright smile and ambitious eyes. Zara had met Jenna at the office Christmas party. She was pretty in that fresh, young way that made older women feel invisible. Robert had introduced them, his hand resting casually on Zara's back as he said, "This is my wife, Zara. Zara, this is Jenna, our newest team member." Jenna had shaken her hand with enthusiasm. "Oh, I've heard so much about you. Robert talks about you all the time." The lie felt bitter now, knowing what she knew. Robert hadn't been talking about his wife to his mistress. He'd been complaining about her, sharing their private moments, their struggles, their intimate details. The betrayal cut deeper than just the affair. It was the complete violation of their marriage, their trust, their shared life. By morning, Zara had made her decision. She wasn't going to confront Robert or beg him to stay. She wasn't going to cry or plead or try to win him back from a girl young enough to be his daughter. She was going to take control of her own story for the first time in years. While Robert showered, she went through his phone more carefully. She took screenshots of everything. Every message, every photo, every plan they'd made. She saved it all to a cloud account he didn't know about. Then she went to their shared computer and began printing. Bank statements, credit card bills, mortgage papers, investment accounts. Everything they owned together, everything that proved their life as a married couple. Robert came downstairs in his usual work clothes, grabbing his coffee and briefcase. "I'll be late tonight," he said, kissing her forehead. "Don't wait up." "Have a good day," Zara replied, watching him leave. As soon as his car disappeared down the street, she got to work. She called in sick to her job at the library, claiming a stomach bug. Then she went upstairs to their bedroom and opened Robert's closet. She pulled out his expensive suits, the ones he wore to important meetings. She folded them carefully and placed them in garbage bags. His shoes, his ties, his watches, his cologne. Everything that made him feel powerful and successful. But she didn't stop there. She packed his personal items, his books, his collections, his sports memorabilia. 12 years of accumulated life, reduced to black plastic bags. As she worked, she felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in months, she wasn't wondering where her husband really was or who he was really with. She knew exactly what she was doing and why. The hardest part was packing away their wedding photos. She stared at the picture on their dresser, the two of them cutting their cake, both grinning with joy and hope. That woman in the white dress had trusted completely, loved without reservation. She deserved better than what she'd gotten. By afternoon, Zara had loaded her car with 10 bags of Robert's belongings. She drove to his office building, her heart pounding but her resolve steel strong. The security guard recognized her and waved her through. She took the elevator to the 15th floor, where Robert worked as a senior accountant. The office was busy with the usual afternoon rush. People moved between cubicles, phones rang, keyboards clicked. Zara walked through it all like she belonged there, carrying the first bag. She found Robert's desk and set it down next to his chair. "Mrs. Thompson?" His secretary Linda looked confused. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Zara said with a smile. "Just bringing Robert some things he forgot." She made trip after trip, bringing bag after bag up from her car. By the time she was done, Robert's workspace looked like a yard sale. Colleagues began to notice and whisper. Some tried to help, thinking she was bringing supplies for some kind of office event. "What's all this for?" asked Tom from the next cubicle. "Oh, you'll see," Zara said mysteriously. She saved the best for last. From her purse, she pulled out a manila envelope and placed it prominently on Robert's desk. Inside were printed copies of every text message, every email, every piece of evidence of his affair with Jenna. Attached was a simple note. "Since you forgot to take your things when you moved in with your girlfriend, I brought them to you. Don't come home. The locks are being changed." Zara sat in her car in the parking garage, watching the elevator doors through the glass lobby. Her phone buzzed constantly with calls from Robert, but she let each one go to voicemail. She wanted to see his face when he discovered what she'd done. She wanted to witness the moment his carefully constructed double life came crashing down. At exactly 4:30 p.m., the elevator opened and Robert stepped out, laughing at something his colleague was saying. He looked relaxed, confident, completely unaware that his world was about to implode. Zara felt a bitter satisfaction watching him walk toward his cubicle with that cocky stride she'd once found attractive. The laughter died on his lips when he saw his desk. Even from her distant vantage point, Zara could see his body language change. His shoulders tensed, his step faltered, and he looked around frantically as if hoping this was some kind of mistake. She watched him pick up the envelope with shaking hands. Her phone rang again. This time she answered. "What the hell is this?" Robert's voice was tight with panic. "It's your stuff," Zara said calmly. "Since you're planning to divorce me anyway, I thought I'd save you the trouble of packing." "Zara, we need to talk. This isn't what it looks like. It looks like my husband of 12 years has been screwing a girl barely out of college and planning to leave me for her. Is that not what it looks like?" Silence on the other end. Around Robert's desk, a crowd was gathering. She could see people reading over his shoulder, pointing at the bags, whispering to each other. In a place where gossip spread faster than wildfire, Robert's secret was becoming public knowledge by the minute. "How did you? You took my phone by mistake this morning. Jenna sent you a very sweet message about how much she loves you and how boring your wife is." More silence. Zara could see Robert's face had gone pale. He was looking around desperately, probably trying to figure out how to contain the damage. "Where is she?" Zara asked. "Who?" "Don't play stupid, Robert. Where's Jenna?" "I assume she's somewhere in that office, probably hiding in the bathroom right about now." "Zara, please. Can we just—" "I asked you a question." She heard him take a shaky breath. She went home early today." "How convenient." Zara started her car. "Well, when you see her tonight, you can thank her for me. She saved me from wasting any more years on our marriage." "Don't do this. We can work through this." "There's nothing to work through. You made your choice months ago. I'm just making mine now." Zara hung up and drove home. Her hands were steady on the steering wheel, but inside she was shaking. The adrenaline that had carried her through the day was wearing off, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. She'd never done anything so dramatic, so public, so final in her life. At home she called a locksmith. While she waited for him to arrive, she went through the house systematically, removing every trace of Robert's presence. His pictures came off the walls, his books disappeared from the shelves, his coffee mug went into a box headed for storage. She wanted to erase him as efficiently as he'd been erasing their marriage. The locksmith arrived just as the sun was setting. He was an older man with kind eyes who didn't ask questions about why a woman would be changing her locks in the middle of the week. He worked quietly and efficiently, and within an hour Robert's keys would no longer open the door to the house they'd bought together. "All set," the locksmith said, handing her the new keys. "You sure you don't want to keep one of the old locks just in case?" "I'm sure," Zara said firmly. After he left, she ordered Chinese food and ate it alone at their kitchen table, which was now just her kitchen table. The silence felt different than it had that morning. This morning, the quiet had been filled with lies and secrets. Tonight, it was filled with truth and possibility. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister Carmen. "Girl, I just saw on Facebook that Robert's coworkers are posting about some drama at his office." "What happened?" Zara smiled. She'd forgotten how fast news traveled in their small city. By tomorrow morning, Everyone would know that Robert Thompson had been caught cheating on his wife and she dumped his belongings at his office like yesterday's trash. She called Carmen back. "You sitting down?" "Oh my God, what did he do?" Zara told her everything. About finding the messages, about discovering the affair, about her afternoon of revenge. Carmen listened without interrupting, occasionally making small sounds of shock or approval. "I can't believe you did that," Carmen said when Zara finished. "My quiet little sister, causing a scene at someone's office. I surprised myself too. Are you okay though? Really okay?" Zara considered the question. She felt many things, angry, hurt, betrayed, relieved, but she also felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. She felt powerful. "I think I am," she said. "For the first time in months, I'm not wondering where he is or what he's doing. I know exactly where he is and who he's with, and I don't care anymore." "Good for you. That man didn't deserve you anyway." After they hung up, Zara ran a hot bath and sank into the water with a glass of wine. She tried to remember the last time she'd taken a bath just for herself, without worrying about Robert needing the bathroom or having somewhere to be. It had been years. Around 9 p.m. she heard a car in the driveway. Then footsteps on the porch. Then the sound of keys trying unsuccessfully to open the front door. She didn't move from the bathroom. Robert knocked, softly at first, then more insistently. "Zara, please. Open the door. We need to talk about this." She said nothing. "I know you're angry and you have every right to be. But we can work through this. What Jenna and I have, it's not real. It's just, I don't know what it is. But you're my wife. You're the one I married." Zara almost laughed. He was treating their marriage like a consolation prize, something to fall back on when his exciting young girlfriend got tired of being a secret. "Zara, please. Don't throw away 12 years over a mistake." A mistake. That's what he was calling months of lying, cheating, and betrayal. A mistake. She heard him walk around the house, trying the back door, checking windows. All locked. Finally, his footsteps retreated, and she heard his car start up. He was probably going to Jenna's apartment, she realized. At least now he didn't have to lie about working late. That night, for the first time in months, Zara slept deeply and dreamlessly in the center of her bed. Zara woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Word had spread faster than she'd expected. Friends, family, co-workers, even acquaintances from her book club were reaching out with shock, support, and barely concealed curiosity about the scandal. Her best friend from college, Nina, had driven 3 hours from the city and was standing on her doorstep with coffee and donuts at 8 a.m. "Girl, I came as soon as I heard," Nina said, pushing past Zara into the house. "Carmen called me last night. I can't believe that sorry excuse for a man did this to you." "How did Carmen know to call you?" "Because she knows you're going to need your girls right now. And because she knows I've been waiting for an excuse to tell you exactly what I think about Robert for the past 5 years." Zara raised an eyebrow. "You never liked him?" "Honey, that man has been treating you like an afterthought since your second year of marriage. Always working late, always too tired to do things you wanted to do, always making you feel like you were asking for too much when you wanted basic attention from your own husband." Nina set the coffee and donuts on the kitchen counter and turned to face Zara directly. "I kept my mouth shut because you seemed happy, but I watched you shrink yourself smaller and smaller to accommodate his selfishness. The affair is just the final insult." Zara poured coffee for both of them, thinking about Nina's words. Had she really been shrinking herself? Looking back, she could see it now. The way she'd stopped asking Robert to go places with her when he repeatedly declined. The way she'd learned to enjoy things alone rather than fight for his attention. The way she'd convinced herself that his distance was just his personality, not a reflection of how he felt about their marriage. "So what's the plan?" Nina asked. "Plan? Revenge plan. You embarrassed him publicly, which was brilliant, by the way. But what's next?" Zara hadn't thought beyond getting through yesterday. "I don't know. Divorce, I guess. Start over. That's it? After 12 years and all that betrayal, you're just going to quietly divorce him and let him ride off into the sunset with his little girlfriend? What else am I supposed to do?" Nina grinned, and Zara recognized that look. It was the same expression Nina had worn in college before she convinced Zara to sneak out of their dorm to crash a fraternity party, or when she talked her into skipping class to drive to the beach. It meant trouble, but the good kind. "We're going to make sure he faces consequences for what he did. Real consequences." "I'm not going to do anything illegal, Nina." "Who said anything about illegal? There are plenty of perfectly legal ways to make a cheating man's life complicated." Before Zara could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed Robert's office number. "Don't answer it," Nina said quickly. It might be important. It's him trying to do damage control. Let him squirm. The phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again. This time it was Robert's personal number. Then Jenna's number, which Zara recognized from the screenshots she'd taken. They were taking turns calling her, probably hoping she'd eventually pick up. Turn it off, Nina advised. You hold all the power right now. Don't give it back by being available whenever they want to explain themselves. Zara powered down her phone. The sudden silence felt liberating. Good. Now tell me about this Jenna person. Zara described the young intern, her ambitions, her apparent belief that stealing someone's husband was a path to success and happiness. 24 years old, Nina mused. Probably thinks she's so mature and sophisticated, dating an older married man. I bet she has no idea what she actually signed up for. What do you mean? Robert cheated on you, his wife of 12 years, the woman he supposedly loved most in the world. What makes her think he won't cheat on her too? Men who cheat don't suddenly become faithful when they get a new woman. They just become cheaters with a new victim. Nina had a point, but Zara found she didn't care what happened to Jenna in the long run. Her concern was rebuilding her own life, not warning other women about Robert's character. Besides, Nina continued, she's about to learn some hard truths about being with a man going through a messy divorce. The legal fees, the drama, the family and friends who'll always see her as the homewrecker. It's not as glamorous as she probably imagined. They spent the morning going through Zara's options. Nina, who worked in marketing, was surprisingly knowledgeable about legal and financial strategies. She helped Zara list all their shared assets, from the house to their retirement accounts to Robert's collection of vintage watches that he thought she didn't know was worth a small fortune. You need to protect yourself financially, Nina said. Don't let guilt or sadness make you settle for less than you deserve. Half of everything you built together is yours. Around noon, Carmen arrived with groceries and reinforcements in the form of their cousin Lisa, who was a paralegal, and their neighbor Mrs. Washington, who had been divorced twice and had strong opinions about men who couldn't keep their vows. That boy always seemed too pleased with himself, Mrs. Washington said, settling into Zara's kitchen like she belonged there. Walking around like he was doing you a favor by being married to you. Honey, it was the other way around. Lisa pulled out a legal pad and started taking notes. First thing we need to do is document everything. You said you have screenshots of their messages? Zara nodded. Good. Print multiple copies and store them in different places. Get statements for all your accounts. If he's been spending money on this girl, we need to know about it. Is that legal? Zara asked. It's your money too. You have a right to know where it's been going. As the afternoon wore on, Zara's house filled with more women. Friends from work, neighbors, her book club members, even some people she barely knew but who had heard about the drama and wanted to show support. It felt like a wake, except instead of mourning the dead, they were celebrating the end of a marriage that had been dying slowly for years. Everyone had a story about Robert. How he'd ignored Zara at parties. How he'd made dismissive comments about her job at the library. How he'd seemed bored when she talked about things she cared about. Patterns Zara had explained away or ignored became obvious when viewed through other people's eyes. I always wondered why you stopped bringing him to book club, said Eleanor, the club president. You used to try to include him in everything. He said reading was a waste of time, Zara remembered. That I should find more productive hobbies. The women in her kitchen made disgusted noises. Productive hobbies, Nina repeated with contempt. Like what, cheating on your wife? As the sun set, the crowd began to thin out. People had families to feed, lives to return to. But Nina, Carmen, and Lisa stayed, helping Zara plan her next moves. Tomorrow you need to see a lawyer, Lisa said. A good one. Not someone who's going to try to push you toward reconciliation or a quick settlement. I can recommend someone, Nina offered. She handled my friend's divorce last year. Took her ex for everything he was worth. I don't want to be vindictive, Zara said. It's not vindictive to protect yourself, Carmen said firmly. It's smart. That night after everyone left, Zara sat alone in her house. It felt different now, filled with the energy and support of all the women who had surrounded her today. She realized she'd been isolated in her marriage without even knowing it. Robert had gradually pulled her away from friendships and activities, keeping her focused on their relationship and his needs. She turned her phone back on and found dozens more messages. Robert sounded increasingly desperate as the day had progressed. His last voicemail was almost incoherent, begging her to call him back, promising to end things with Jenna, swearing their marriage could be saved. But it was too late for promises. Zara had spent one day as a single woman, surrounded by people who valued and supported her, and she already felt more alive than she had in years. There was no going back to the woman who had been so grateful for scraps of attention from her own husband. She deleted all the messages without responding and went to bed, already planning her visit to the divorce attorney in the morning. The law office of Patricia Henderson was nothing like what Zara had expected. Instead of the sterile, intimidating environment she'd imagined, the space was warm and comfortable, with soft lighting and tasteful artwork. Patricia herself was a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and kind but sharp eyes. "I've heard about your situation," Patricia said after they'd settled in her office. "Word travels fast in this town." Zara felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I probably shouldn't have made such a public scene." "On the contrary, it was brilliant. Your husband can't claim this is an amicable separation or that you're being unreasonable. His co-workers witnessed evidence of his affair firsthand. That gives us considerable leverage." Patricia spread out a legal pad and began taking notes as Zara told her story. She was thorough, asking specific questions about their finances, their assets, and the timeline of Robert's affair. "You said you have documentation of their relationship?" Zara handed over a folder containing printed screenshots of the text messages and emails she'd discovered. Patricia reviewed them carefully, occasionally making notes. "This is excellent evidence. The texts show clear intent to divorce you and continue the relationship with his paramour. In our state, adultery can impact the division of assets, especially if marital funds were used to support the affair." "What do you mean?" "Hotel rooms, dinners, gifts, maybe even an apartment if he's been helping her with rent. We need to go through your credit card statements and bank records to see what he's been spending on her." The idea that Robert had been using their money to wine and dine his mistress made Zara's stomach turn. "How much money are we talking about?" "That depends on how long this has been going on and how generous he's been. But it could be significant enough to affect the settlement." Patricia walked Zara through the divorce process, explaining timelines and potential outcomes. It would take several months, possibly longer if Robert decided to fight the terms. "Will he get half of everything?" Zara asked. "Not necessarily. Given the adultery and the potential misuse of marital funds, we can argue for a more favorable division. The house, for instance, if you can afford the payments, there's a good chance you can keep it." The thought of staying in the house she'd shared with Robert felt both comforting and difficult. It held 12 years of memories, good and bad. But it was also her home, her space, her sanctuary. "I want to keep it," Zara said firmly. "Good. We'll make that a priority." After the appointment, Zara drove to the bank to request detailed statements for all their accounts. The teller, a young man who looked barely old enough to drive, seemed nervous as he processed her request. "These go back 2 years," he said. "That's a lot of transactions. I need all of them." While she waited for the statements to print, Zara's phone buzzed with yet another call from Robert. She'd been ignoring him for 2 days now, and his messages were becoming increasingly frantic. Part of her almost felt sorry for him, until she remembered why she was sitting in a bank requesting evidence of his betrayal. The statements were thick, hundreds of pages of transactions that told the story of their financial life together. Zara took them home and spread them across her dining room table, looking for patterns she'd missed when she wasn't looking for them. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Grocery stores, gas stations, their mortgage payment, utilities. The mundane expenses of a shared life. But then she started noticing things. Restaurant charges at places she'd never been. A jewelry store purchase in March that hadn't resulted in any gift for her. Hotel charges in the city during times when Robert claimed to be working late at the office. The most damning evidence was a recurring monthly payment to something called Sunset Apartments. $500 every month for the past 6 months. Zara Googled the address and felt her breath catch. It was a luxury apartment complex across town, the kind of place a young professional might live if someone else was helping with rent. Jenna's apartment. Robert had been paying for Jenna's apartment. Zara sat back in her chair, staring at the evidence spread before her. 6 months of rent payments meant Robert had been planning this relationship as more than just a fling. He'd been setting his mistress up in her own place, creating a space for their affair to flourish while he went home to his wife every night. The betrayal felt fresh all over again. It was one thing to discover he'd been sleeping with someone else. It was another to realize he'd been building a whole separate life, funded by money that should have been going toward their shared future. Her doorbell rang, interrupting her investigation. Through the peephole, she saw a delivery man holding an enormous bouquet of flowers. She almost didn't answer, suspecting they were from Robert, but curiosity won out. Zara Thompson? The delivery man asked. She nodded and signed for the flowers, then read the card attached. From everyone at the library. We're proud of you for standing up for yourself. Take all the time you need. The gesture brought tears to her eyes. She'd called in sick for the past 2 days, and her supervisor had been understanding when Zara explained she was dealing with a family emergency. Now she realized her co-workers knew exactly what kind of emergency it was. She was arranging the flowers in a vase when her phone rang. This time it wasn't Robert. It was Jenna. Zara stared at the name on the screen, debating whether to answer. Part of her was curious about what the other woman would say. Part of her wanted to hang up and continue ignoring everyone connected to her soon-to-be ex-husband. On the 5th ring she answered. Hello, Jenna. Pause. Mrs. Thompson? I wasn't sure you'd answer. I wasn't sure I would either. What do you want? I wanted to talk to you. To explain. Explain what? That you've been sleeping with my husband for months? That you've been laughing about how boring and stupid I am? That you've been planning my divorce before I even knew there was a problem with my marriage? Another pause. When Jenna spoke again, her voice was smaller. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? Were you planning to wait until after he divorced me to start sleeping with him? Or were you just hoping I'd never find out? I don't know. I didn't think it through. You didn't think it through? Zara repeated. You didn't think about the woman whose husband you were stealing. You didn't think about the marriage you were helping to destroy. You just wanted what you wanted and decided everyone else's feelings didn't matter. That's not fair. What's not fair is finding out your husband of 12 years has been living a double life. What's not fair is discovering he's been using your shared money to pay for his mistress's apartment. What's not fair is having your marriage destroyed by someone who didn't think it through. Silence on the other end of the line. Why are you calling me Jenna? What did you think this conversation would accomplish? I wanted you to know that I never meant to hurt you. But you did hurt me. You hurt me badly. And the fact that you didn't mean to doesn't change that. I know. I'm sorry. Are you? Are you really sorry? Or are you just sorry you got caught? Another long pause. I don't know, Jenna admitted quietly. Well, at least you're being honest about something. Zara looked at the bank statements spread across her table, at the evidence of months of deception and betrayal. Let me give you some advice, Jenna. Men who cheat on their wives don't suddenly become faithful when they get a new girlfriend. If Robert could lie to me for months, he can lie to you too. It's different with us. That's what they all say. Good luck with that. Zara hung up before Jenna could respond. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear or sadness. She was angry, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't trying to push that anger down or make it smaller or more palatable. She called Patricia Henderson's office and left a message about the apartment payments and the other evidence she'd found. Then she called Nina. I found out he's been paying for her apartment, she said without preamble. That bastard, Nina said immediately. How much? $500 a month for 6 months. Plus hotel rooms, dinners, jewelry. Thousands of dollars of our money spent on his affair. Good. That's going to cost him in the divorce. She called me, Zara continued. Jenna called me to apologize. What did she say? That she didn't mean to hurt me and it wasn't supposed to happen like this. Oh, please. She knew exactly what she was doing. That's what I told her. Nina was quiet for a moment. How are you feeling? Really? Zara considered the question. Angry, but not in a bad way. I feel powerful. Like I'm finally fighting for myself instead of just accepting whatever scraps of love and attention people want to give me. Good. That's exactly how you should feel. That night, Zara ordered pizza and spread the bank statements across her living room floor. She went through every transaction systematically, highlighting anything that looked suspicious. The pattern of deception was clear once she knew what to look for. Robert had been living 2 lives for months and she'd been paying for both of them. But not anymore. Tomorrow she would give all this evidence to her lawyer. And soon, Robert would learn that cheating on his wife was the most expensive mistake he'd ever made. A week after the confrontation at Robert's office, Zara was finally beginning to feel like herself again. She'd returned to work at the library, where her colleagues had been nothing but supportive. They didn't ask prying questions or expect her to justify her actions. They simply treated her with the same respect they always had, plus a new layer of admiration for how she'd handled her situation. You've inspired half the married women in this town, her supervisor Margaret told her during their lunch break. Sally from the children's department said she finally confronted her husband about his gambling problem after watching how you dealt with Robert. Zara was shelving returns in the fiction section when she noticed a familiar figure browsing the romance novels. At first, she couldn't place the young woman with the long brown hair and designer handbag. Then the woman turned, and Zara found herself face to face with Jenna. The younger woman looked nervous, almost guilty, as if she'd been caught doing something wrong. Which, Zara reflected, she had been for the past several months. "Mrs. Thompson," Jenna said quietly. "It's Miss Thompson now," Zara corrected. "Or just Zara. What are you doing here?" I like to read. "I didn't know you worked here." It was obviously a lie. In a town their size, everyone knew where everyone else worked. Jenna had come here deliberately, though Zara couldn't imagine why. "Can we talk?" Jenna asked, glancing around nervously. "Please? Just for a few minutes?" Zara looked at her watch. She had 15 minutes left on her break. Against her better judgment, she gestured toward a quiet corner of the library where they could speak without disturbing other patrons. "What do you want to talk about?" Zara asked once they were seated at a small table between the history and biography sections. Jenna twisted her hands in her lap. "Things with Robert they're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. I thought once you knew about us it would be easier. We wouldn't have to sneak around anymore. We could be together openly." Zara studied the young woman across from her. Jenna looked tired, and there was something defeated in her posture that hadn't been there at the Christmas party. "And it's not easier?" "He's angry all the time now. About the divorce, about losing the house, about his reputation at work. He blames me for it." "He blames you?" "He says if I hadn't sent that text to your phone, none of this would have happened. He says I ruined everything." Zara almost laughed. "So it's your fault that he got caught cheating?" "That's what he says. And maybe he's right. If I'd been more careful." "Stop," Zara said firmly. "Don't you dare blame yourself for his choices. Robert chose to have an affair. Robert chose to lie to both of us. Robert chose to use our money to pay for your apartment. You didn't force him to do any of that." Jenna looked surprised. "You know about the apartment?" "I know about a lot of things now. Bank records are very revealing. He told me his marriage was over. He said you two were just going through the motions, that you'd grown apart years ago. And you believed him?" "I wanted to believe him," Jenna admitted. "I thought I was helping him escape from something that was making him unhappy." Zara felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy. She remembered being 24, remembered thinking she understood the world better than she actually did. "Let me tell you something about Robert," Zara said. "When we first started dating, he told me he'd never loved anyone the way he loved me. He said his previous girlfriend had been nice but boring, that they'd just been going through the motions." "Sound familiar?" Jenna's face went pale. "Men like Robert don't leave relationships because they're unhappy. They start new relationships because they're bored. There's a difference." "You think he'll do the same thing to me?" "I think Robert is a man who gets excited by new things and loses interest in familiar ones. I think he's attracted to the drama and secrecy, not to building something real with someone." Jenna was quiet for a long moment. "He's been different since everything came out. Colder. Like he resents me for existing." "That's because the affair was never really about you, Jenna. It was about him feeling powerful and desired and young again. Now that it's out in the open, now that there are real consequences, the fantasy is over." "So what am I supposed to do?" Zara stood up. Her break was over and she needed to get back to work. "That's not my problem to solve. You made your choices, now you get to live with them. Just like I'm living with mine." She walked away, leaving Jenna sitting alone at the table. For the rest of the afternoon, Zara found herself thinking about the conversation. There had been a time when she might have felt sorry for the other woman, might have tried to help her or give her advice. But that time was over. Jenna was an adult who had made adult decisions. She could figure out how to handle the consequences on her own. That evening, Patricia Henderson called with an update on the divorce proceedings. "We've filed the papers," Patricia said. "Robert's attorney wants to meet to discuss settlement terms." "What kind of terms?" "He's asking for joint custody of assets, minimal alimony, and he wants to keep his retirement account intact." Zara laughed. "After what he did? After spending our money on his mistress?" "That's what I told his lawyer. We're going to counter with a much more favorable offer for you. The house, half his retirement, and spousal support for 5 years while you rebuild your career." "Can we get that?" "With the evidence you've provided, I think we have a very strong case. His attorney knows it too. That's why they're eager to settle out of court." After they hung up, Zara made herself dinner and settled in front of the television. She was halfway through a cooking show when her doorbell rang. Through the peephole, she saw Robert standing on her porch, holding what looked like a bottle of wine. She didn't open the door. "Zara, I know you're in there," he called through the door. "Please just give me 5 minutes. I brought that wine you like, the one from our anniversary dinner." The manipulation was so obvious it was almost insulting. Did he really think a bottle of wine would make her forget months of betrayal? "Go away, Robert," she called back. "If you want to talk to me, have your lawyer call my lawyer. This is ridiculous. We're adults. We should be able to have a conversation. We had 12 years of conversations. You spent most of them lying to me." She heard him walk around to the back door and try the handle. Then to the windows, testing them like a burglar. The thought crossed her mind that she should call the police, but he gave up quickly and returned to the front porch. "I ended it with her," he called through the door. "It's over. I choose you, Zara. I choose our marriage. You chose her months ago when you started sleeping with her. You chose her when you paid for her apartment. You chose her when you told her I was boring and you couldn't wait to divorce me. I never said that. I have the text messages, Robert. I printed them all out." Silence from the porch. "Go home," Zara said. "Or go to Jenna's apartment. The one I've been paying for." "I'm not paying for her apartment anymore. Because you got caught, not because you felt guilty." More silence. Then footsteps retreating to his car. Zara watched through the window as he sat in his driveway for almost 20 minutes, staring at the house. Finally he drove away. Her phone rang immediately. She let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message he left. "I know I messed up," his voice said. "I know I hurt you badly. But we can get through this if you'll just give me a chance. 12 years has to count for something. I love you, Zara. I've always loved you." She deleted the message without listening to it twice. Love wasn't just a word you said when you got caught. Love was a choice you made every day in small actions and big decisions. Robert had been choosing not to love her for months. She wasn't going to let him choose her now just because his other option had fallen through. The next morning she woke up to find a letter slipped under her door. Robert's handwriting on expensive stationery, probably something he'd bought for business correspondence. "Zara," it began, "I know you're angry and you have every right to be. I made terrible choices and hurt the person I love most in the world. But please don't let my mistakes destroy what we built together. We can go to counseling. We can work through this. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. Please don't give up on us. Robert." She folded the letter and put it in the box with all the other evidence she was collecting for the divorce. His words might have moved her once, but now they just sounded like someone desperate to avoid the consequences of his actions. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nina. "Lunch today? I have news." They met at their favorite cafe, where Nina was practically vibrating with excitement. "You're never going to believe what I heard," Nina said the moment Zara sat down. "What?" Robert got passed over for the promotion he was expecting. The one that was supposed to come with a big raise. Zara raised an eyebrow. "How do you know that?" "My friend works in HR at his company. Apparently, the partners decided they couldn't promote someone who was having such public personal problems. Bad for the company image." "That seems harsh." "Is it though? He was cheating on his wife and using company equipment to conduct his affair. Those text messages were sent from his work phone during work hours. He's lucky they didn't fire him." Zara thought about this while they ordered their food. She hadn't intended for Robert's career to suffer, but she couldn't feel sorry for him either. Actions had consequences and he was finally experiencing some. "There's more," Nina continued. "Apparently Jenna got fired." "Fired? For what?" "Conducting a relationship with a senior employee. It's against company policy. She violated her employment contract." Zara felt a small stab of something that might have been guilt. Whatever Jenna's mistakes, losing her job seemed like a steep price to pay. "Don't feel bad for her," Nina said, reading her expression. She knew the rules when she decided to sleep with a married man 20 years older than her. She made her choices. "I know. It's just, she's so young." "So? You were young once too, and you didn't go around breaking up marriages." Nina had a point. Zara had made plenty of mistakes in her 20s, but destroying someone else's relationship hadn't been one of them. "The best part," Nina continued, "is that Robert stuck paying for her apartment through the end of the lease since his name is on the contract. So he's basically paying rent for his ex-mistress while going through an expensive divorce." Despite everything, Zara found herself smiling. There was a certain poetic justice to Robert being trapped by his own deception. "You're enjoying this," Nina observed. "Maybe a little," Zara admitted. "Is that terrible?" "It's human. He hurt you badly and now he's facing consequences for his choices. There's nothing wrong with finding some satisfaction in that. That afternoon, Zara returned to work with a lighter heart than she'd had in weeks. For the first time since discovering the affair, she felt like the scales of justice were finally balancing in her favor. 3 weeks after the scandal broke, Zara was settling into a new routine. She woke up when she wanted to, ate breakfast without rushing, and took her time getting ready for work. She'd forgotten how peaceful mornings could be when you weren't walking on eggshells around someone else's mood. At the library, she'd been promoted to head librarian after Margaret announced her retirement. It came with a salary increase and more responsibility, both of which Zara welcomed. She was reorganizing the reference section when Carmen appeared with a cup of coffee and a knowing smile. "You look different," Carmen said, settling into a chair at the research desk. "Different how?" "Happier. Lighter. Like you've been carrying around a heavy bag for years and finally set it down." Zara considered this. "I feel different too. I didn't realize how much energy I was spending trying to make Robert happy, trying to be the perfect wife for someone who didn't appreciate it. And now I'm just trying to make myself happy. It's surprisingly easier." Carmen laughed. "Most things are easier when you're not constantly second-guessing yourself." They were interrupted by the arrival of an older woman Zara didn't recognize. She was well-dressed in the way that suggested money without being flashy about it, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone used to being listened to. "Excuse me," the woman said. "Are you Zara Thompson?" "Yes, can I help you?" "I'm Helen Morrison, Robert's mother." Zara felt her stomach drop. She hadn't seen her mother-in-law since Christmas, and that had been a strained visit even before the affair came to light. "Mrs. Morrison," Zara said carefully, "what can I do for you? I was hoping we could talk. Privately." Carmen squeezed Zara's shoulder and made herself scarce, leaving the two women alone among the stacks of books. "I suppose you know why I'm here," Helen said. "I assume it's about the divorce. Robert is my son and I love him. But I also know he's made some terrible choices." Helen's voice was steady but there was pain in her eyes. "I wanted to apologize to you, and to ask if there's any way you might consider giving him another chance." Zara had always liked Helen even when things with Robert were difficult. The older woman had treated her like a daughter, remembering her birthday and including her in family traditions. This conversation was harder than facing Robert himself. "Mrs. Morrison, I appreciate you coming here, but—" "Helen, please. We've been family for 12 years. "Helen," Zara corrected. "I know you love Robert and I know this is difficult for you. But what he did, it wasn't just a mistake. It was months of deliberate deception." "I know. He told me everything. About the girl, about the apartment, about the lies." Helen's voice cracked slightly. "I raised him better than that. His father and I, we were married for 43 years. We went through hard times but we never betrayed each other like that. Then you understand why I can't just forgive and forget." Helen nodded slowly. "I do understand. I keep thinking about all the good years you two had. Surely that counts for something?" Zara thought about the early years of her marriage, when Robert had been attentive and loving. When they'd stayed up late talking about their dreams, when he'd surprised her with small gifts just because he was thinking of her. "Those years do count," Zara said. "They're part of why this hurts so much. The man I fell in love with wouldn't have done this. But that man has been gone for a long time. I just didn't want to admit it." Helen was quiet for a moment, processing this. "What will you do now?" "I'm going to rebuild my life. I got promoted here at the library. I'm keeping the house. I'm going to travel, take classes, do all the things I put on hold while I was trying to be the perfect wife." "That sounds wonderful," Helen said, and she sounded like she meant it. "You deserve to be happy, Zara. You always deserved better than what Robert gave you these past few years." The admission surprised Zara. "You noticed?" "Of course I noticed. I watched my son take you for granted, watched him treat your marriage like an obligation instead of a gift. I should have said something, but you don't interfere in your adult children's marriages, even when you want to." They talked for a few more minutes about practical things. The house, the divorce timeline, whether Zara would stay in touch with Robert's family. Helen made it clear that Zara would always be welcome at family gatherings with or without Robert. "I hope you find someone who appreciates you," Helen said as she prepared to leave. "Someone who sees what a treasure you are." After Helen left, Zara sat alone in the quiet library processing the conversation. She'd expected anger or blame from Robert's family, not understanding and support. It was another sign that she was making the right choice. That evening she was cooking dinner when her phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. Hello. Is this Zara Thompson? Yes, who is this? This is James Mitchell. I'm an attorney representing Jenna Collins. Zara nearly dropped the phone. What? Ms. Collins would like to discuss a possible civil suit against your husband for wrongful termination and breach of contract. I'm sorry, what does that have to do with me? She's hoping you might be willing to provide testimony about the timeline of their relationship and the circumstances under which it became public. Zara sat down heavily. You want me to help Jenna sue Robert? In essence, yes. Her firing was directly related to the public exposure of their relationship. If you could testify that you discovered the affair and made it public without any input from her, it would strengthen her case. Why would I help her? She slept with my husband. Because, frankly, you both were wronged by the same man. He used his position of power to manipulate a young employee, then allowed her to take the fall when his deception was exposed. Zara found herself considering this perspective. She'd been so focused on Jenna as the other woman that she hadn't thought about the power dynamics at play. Robert was 20 years older, in a senior position, married. Jenna had been young, new to the company, probably flattered by the attention from an older, successful man. I need to think about this, Zara said. Of course. Here's my card information. Ms. Collins isn't looking for a large settlement, just enough to cover her lost wages while she finds new employment. After they hung up, Zara called Nina. You're kidding, Nina said when Zara explained the situation. I'm as surprised as you are. Are you going to do it? I don't know. Part of me thinks she got what she deserved. But another part of me thinks maybe we were both victims of Robert's selfishness. What would testifying involve? Just confirming that I discovered the affair on my own and that Robert was the one in the position of power. Nina was quiet for a moment. You know what? I think you should do it. Really? Think about it. Robert convinced a young woman that his marriage was over, used company resources to conduct an affair, then let her take all the blame when it came out. That's exactly the kind of behavior that should have consequences. But she knew he was married. She knew he was married, but she didn't know he was lying about planning to divorce you. She didn't know he was still sleeping with you while sleeping with her. She thought she was dating a man who was separated, not destroying a happy marriage. Zara realized Nina had a point. The text messages she'd seen showed Robert telling Jenna things that weren't true about the state of his marriage. Plus, Nina continued, if he faces legal consequences for this, it might prevent him from doing it to someone else in the future. That night, Zara read through the text messages again, this time looking at them from Jenna's perspective. She could see how a young woman might believe she was saving a man from an unhappy marriage, especially when he was telling her what she wanted to hear. Robert had manipulated both of them, just in different ways. The next morning she called James Mitchell back. I'll testify, she said. But I want to meet with Jenna first. I want to hear her side of the story. They arranged to meet at a coffee shop across town, away from anywhere they might be recognized. Jenna arrived first, looking nervous and younger than her 24 years. She'd lost weight since Zara had last seen her, and there were dark circles under her eyes. Thank you for coming, Jenna said as Zara sat down across from her. I haven't decided anything yet. I just want to understand what really happened. Jenna told her story haltingly, stopping frequently to wipe away tears. She'd been flattered when Robert started paying attention to her, showing interest in her work, offering to mentor her career. The personal conversations had started gradually, complaints about his marriage, suggestions that he and his wife were staying together out of habit rather than love. He made it sound like you two were roommates, Jenna said. Like you were just going through the motions until one of you got the courage to file for divorce. And you believed him? I wanted to believe him. He was successful and sophisticated, and I thought I was mature enough to handle a complicated relationship. Jenna's voice was bitter. I was so naive. When did you realize he was lying? When everything came out and I saw how devastated you were. A woman doesn't react like that to losing a husband she doesn't love. I realized he'd been lying to both of us. They talked for over an hour. Jenna painted a picture of Robert as a master manipulator, someone who knew exactly what to say to make her feel special and important. She genuinely believed she was helping him escape an unhappy situation, not destroying a loving marriage. I'm not trying to excuse what I did, Jenna said. I should have been more careful, should have asked more questions. But I trusted him and he used that trust to get what he wanted. By the end of the conversation, Zara found herself feeling something she'd never expected. Sympathy for the other woman. They'd both been victims of Robert's selfishness and deception, just in different ways. I'll testify, Zara said finally. Not because I forgive what you did, but because what he did was worse. Jenna's relief was visible. Thank you. I know I don't deserve your help. Maybe not. But you don't deserve to lose your career over his lies either. As they parted ways, Zara felt a strange sense of closure. She'd spent so much energy hating Jenna, viewing her as the villain in her story. But the real villain had been Robert all along, the man who'd betrayed them both for his own selfish pleasure. For the first time since discovering the affair, Zara felt like she was finally seeing the situation clearly. And what she saw made her more determined than ever to make sure Robert faced real consequences for his actions. The deposition took place in Patricia Henderson's office on a rainy Thursday morning. Zara had been nervous about facing Robert's attorney, but the questioning was straightforward and professional. She simply told the truth about discovering the affair, the timeline of events, and what she knew about Robert's relationship with Jenna. Did your husband ever indicate to you that he was planning to end your marriage? Robert's attorney asked. Never. In fact, the week before I discovered the affair, he suggested we plan a vacation for our anniversary. And you had no knowledge of any problems in your marriage that might have led to his seeking companionship elsewhere? Zara felt a flash of anger at the suggestion that she was somehow to blame for Robert's cheating. Our marriage had the normal ups and downs that any 12-year relationship has. But we were intimate, we communicated regularly, and we were making plans for the future together. If Robert was unhappy, he never expressed that to me. After the deposition, Patricia walked Zara to her car. You did well in there, Patricia said. Your testimony was clear and consistent. How do you think Jenna's case will go? I think she has a strong chance of winning. Your husband's attorney knows it too, that's why the questioning was so brief. They're trying to minimize their exposure. Good. She deserves some justice in all this. Patricia gave her a sharp look. You've changed your mind about her. I've realized that Robert is the real villain here. Jenna made bad choices, but he's the one who manipulated the situation for his own benefit. That afternoon, Zara was reshelving books when she noticed a commotion near the library's front entrance. Through the glass doors, she could see Robert's car in the parking lot and Robert himself pacing back and forth on the sidewalk, talking animatedly on his phone. Her supervisor, Margaret, appeared at her elbow. Should we call security? No, he's not inside. He can pace on public property if he wants to. But as the afternoon wore on, Robert remained outside, alternately sitting in his car and walking around the building. Other library patrons began to notice and whisper. Zara tried to focus on her work, but his presence was distracting. Finally, she'd had enough. She walked outside to confront him. What are you doing here, Robert? He looked haggard, older than his 42 years. His usually perfect hair was disheveled and his shirt was wrinkled. I need to talk to you. About the deposition. About what you're doing to me. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm telling the truth. You're trying to destroy my life. First the scene at my office, now helping that girl sue me. What's next, Zara? What's next is our divorce being finalized and me moving on with my life. You should try doing the same. How can I move on when you're systematically destroying everything I've worked for? I could lose my job over this lawsuit. Zara felt a moment of genuine surprise. You're worried about losing your job? What about losing your wife? What about destroying our marriage? That's different. How is it different? Robert ran his hands through his hair, looking frustrated. The marriage, that was personal. This affects my career, my future, my ability to support myself. You should have thought about that before you decided to sleep with an intern and use company resources to do it. I made a mistake. Stop calling it a mistake. Zara's voice rose, causing several passers-by to look in their direction. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at the store. What you did was a deliberate choice you made every single day for months. Fine, it was a choice. A bad choice. But I've learned from it. I've grown. We could be stronger than we were before. Zara stared at him in disbelief. Stronger? You think betraying me for months, lying to my face every day, and using our money to pay for your girlfriend's apartment is something we can just grow stronger from? People get through infidelity all the time. There are books about it, counselors who specialize in it. I don't want to get through it, Robert. I want to get over it. I want to get over you. The words hung in the air between them. For a moment, Robert looked genuinely shocked, as if the possibility that she might actually want to end their marriage had never occurred to him. You don't mean that, he said finally. I absolutely mean that. For the first time in years, I'm happy. I wake up every morning excited about my day instead of wondering what mood you'll be in or whether you'll actually come home when you say you will. I like my life without you in it. But we have history together. We have memories. We do have memories. Some of them are beautiful. But they're in the past, Robert. They don't erase what you did, and they don't obligate me to stay married to someone who betrayed me so completely. Robert was quiet for a long moment, and Zara thought maybe he was finally understanding that their marriage was truly over. Then he spoke again, and his voice had a hard edge she'd rarely heard before. You think you're so perfect, don't you? The innocent victim in all this. But you're not blameless, Zara. You stopped trying in our marriage years ago. Stopped trying how? You became boring. Predictable. All you cared about was your books and your quiet little routines. When was the last time you surprised me? When was the last time you initiated sex or planned something exciting for us to do together? The accusation stung because there was a grain of truth in it. Zara had become comfortable in their routines, had stopped putting as much effort into romance as she had in the early years of their marriage. You're right, she said, surprising him. I did get comfortable. I stopped trying to impress you or win your attention. Do you know why? He shook his head. Because I thought I had won it already. I thought being married meant I didn't have to compete for my own husband's affection anymore. I thought you loved me enough to tell me if you were unhappy instead of going behind my back and finding someone else. Zara? I became boring because I felt safe. I stopped trying to be exciting because I trusted you to love me even when I wasn't perfect. That trust was apparently misplaced. She turned to walk back into the library, but Robert caught her arm. Don't touch me, she said firmly, and he immediately let go. I'm sorry, he said, and for the first time he sounded like he actually meant it. I'm sorry for all of it. For the affair, for the lies, for blaming you for my choices. You deserved better. Yes, I did. And now I'm going to make sure I get it. That evening, Zara called Nina to tell her about the confrontation. He actually said you were boring? Nina's voice was incredulous. The audacity of this man. The worst part is he wasn't entirely wrong. I had gotten comfortable, maybe even a little boring. So what? Marriage is supposed to be comfortable. It's supposed to be a safe space where you can relax and be yourself without constantly performing. I know that now. But at the time, hearing him say it hurt. Of course it hurt. He was trying to make you feel like his cheating was somehow your fault. Classic manipulation tactic. Nina was right, but Zara found herself thinking about the conversation long after they hung up. Had she become too comfortable in her marriage? Had she stopped putting in effort? The next morning, she looked at herself honestly in the mirror. She had gained some weight over the years, had stopped wearing makeup regularly, had fallen into a routine of comfortable clothes and predictable hairstyles. But so had Robert. So did most married couples after more than a decade together. The difference was she would have been happy to put more effort into their relationship if he'd asked her to. If he'd planned a romantic date, she would have dressed up. If he'd suggested they try new things together, she would have been game. But instead of communicating his needs, he'd gone looking for excitement with someone else. At work that day, she made a decision. She was going to start putting effort into herself again, not to win Robert back, but because she deserved to feel attractive and confident. She made an appointment at a salon she'd been wanting to try for years but had always deemed too expensive. The transformation was subtle but significant. The stylist cut 6 inches off her hair and added highlights that brought out the gold flecks in her brown eyes. She bought new makeup and learned how to apply it from a YouTube tutorial. She treated herself to a few new outfits that actually fit her current body instead of hiding it. The change was noticed immediately at work. Patrons complimented her hair, co-workers said she looked radiant, and she felt more confident than she had in years. You look amazing, Carmen said when she stopped by the library. Like you're glowing from the inside out. I feel good, Zara realized. Really good. Like I'm finally becoming myself again. Who were you before Robert? Zara thought about this. I was adventurous. I traveled, I tried new things, I said yes to opportunities. I was curious about the world. And then I got married and became focused on being a good wife. I made Robert's happiness my priority and somehow lost track of my own. Well, you're finding it again now. That night, Zara looked through photo albums from before her marriage. She saw a young woman who smiled easily, who seemed comfortable in her own skin, who looked directly at the camera with confidence and joy. Somewhere along the way that woman had disappeared. But she was coming back. Slowly, carefully, like a flower opening after a long winter, Zara was rediscovering who she was when she wasn't trying to be someone else's idea of the perfect wife. And for the first time since her world had fallen apart, she was excited to see who she would become. The divorce papers were finalized on a crisp October morning, exactly 6 months after Zara had discovered Robert's affair. She sat in Patricia Henderson's office, signing document after document that formally ended 12 years of marriage. Her hand was steady, her signature confident. "Congratulations," Patricia said when the last paper was signed. "You're officially a free woman." Zara had expected to feel sad or nostalgic at this moment, but instead she felt relief. The uncertainty was over. The legal battles were behind her. She could finally move forward completely. The settlement had been generous. She kept the house, received half of Robert's retirement savings, and would get spousal support for 3 years while she built her career. Robert had agreed to all of it without contest, perhaps because he knew fighting would only expose more of his poor choices to public scrutiny. "What's the first thing you're going to do?" Patricia asked as they shook hands goodbye. "Travel," Zara said without hesitation. "I'm taking a month off work and going to Europe. Something I've wanted to do for years but never did because Robert said it was too expensive." That afternoon she booked her trip. London, Paris, Rome, Florence, all the places she dreamed of seeing but had put on hold for someday. Someday was finally here. She was browsing travel guides at the library when she looked up to see a man standing at the reference desk. He was tall, with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Something about him seemed familiar, but she couldn't place where she might have seen him before. "Excuse me," he said when he noticed her looking. "Are you Zara? Zara Thompson?" "It's Zara Williams now, actually. I went back to my maiden name. Do we know each other?" He smiled and she noticed he had a dimple in his left cheek. "I'm Marcus." "No, sorry, that's not right. I'm actually David Chin. I think we went to college together?" "English literature program?" Zara studied his face more carefully and suddenly the years fell away. "David. Of course. You sat behind me in Professor Morrison's Shakespeare class. You remember? I wasn't sure you would. It's been, 20 years? They chatted for a few minutes, catching up on the basics. David was a professor now at the local university, teaching English literature. He'd been married, divorced, had 2 teenage daughters who lived with their mother in the next state. "I heard about your divorce," he said gently. "I'm sorry. That must have been difficult." Zara was surprised. "How did you hear about it?" "Small town," he said with a rueful smile. "Plus, your story kind of became legendary around campus. Some of my female colleagues have been using it as an example of how to handle betrayal with dignity." "Oh God," Zara said, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. "That's embarrassing." "Are you kidding? It was brilliant. Half the faculty wives wish they had your backbone." They were interrupted by a patron needing help, but David lingered until Zara was free again. "This might be presumptuous," he said, "but would you like to have coffee sometime? It would be nice to catch up properly." Zara hesitated. She hadn't been on a date in over 12 years, hadn't even thought about dating other men. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. "I'd like that," she heard herself say. They met for coffee the next Saturday at a small cafe downtown. What Zara had expected to be an awkward hour of catching up turned into a 4-hour conversation that flowed as easily as if they'd been friends all along. David had changed since college, but in good ways. He was more confident, more settled in himself. He made her laugh with stories about his students, and he listened intently when she talked about her work at the library and her plans for traveling. "You always were the smartest person in our literature classes," he said over their second cup of coffee. "I had such a crush on you, but you were dating that guy from the basketball team." "Really? I had no idea. I was very subtle about it. Probably too subtle." Zara found herself blushing like a teenager. What happened to being subtle? 20 years of experience taught me that life's too short to not tell people how you feel about them. The comment hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility. Zara felt a flutter of something she hadn't experienced in years, genuine romantic interest. "I should probably tell you," she said carefully, "I'm not looking for anything serious. I just got out of a long marriage and I'm still figuring out who I am as a single person." "That's perfect," David said. "I'm not looking for anything serious either. I'm still figuring out how to co-parent teenagers while having my own life. Maybe we can figure things out together, no pressure." They began seeing each other casually. Coffee dates, walks in the park, dinner at quiet restaurants where they could talk for hours. David was everything Robert hadn't been. Attentive, curious about her thoughts and feelings, supportive of her independence. "He sounds too good to be true," Nina said when Zara told her about him. "What's wrong with him?" "Nothing's wrong with him. He's just nice. Nice men exist, you know. You've just been with a selfish one for so long you forgot." Nina had a point. David's basic decency felt revolutionary after years of Robert's self-centered behavior. When David said he'd call, he called. When he made plans, he kept them. When she talked, he listened without immediately turning the conversation back to himself. 3 weeks into their casual dating, Zara ran into Jenna at the grocery store. The younger woman looked healthier than she had the last time they'd met, less hollow around the eyes. "Zara," Jenna said, seeming genuinely pleased to see her. "How are you?" "I'm well. How are you?" "Did the lawsuit settle?" "It did. Your testimony made all the difference. I got enough to cover my expenses while I found a new job." "Good. I'm glad it worked out. I wanted to thank you again. You didn't have to help me, especially after everything that happened." Zara looked at the young woman and realized she felt no anger toward her anymore. Jenna had made poor choices, but she'd been as much a victim of Robert's manipulation as Zara had been. "We were both deceived by the same man," Zara said. "It seemed like we should help each other rather than blame each other. For what it's worth, I learned a lot from this whole experience. I'll never get involved with a married man again, no matter what he tells me about his marriage." "That's probably wise." They parted on friendly terms, and Zara felt another weight lift from her shoulders. She'd let go of her anger toward Jenna months ago, but this conversation felt like official closure on that chapter of her life. Her trip to Europe was everything she'd hoped it would be. She spent 2 weeks exploring London's museums and theaters, another week wandering through Paris's art galleries and cafes, and a final week soaking up the history and culture of Rome and Florence. She traveled alone, but she was never lonely. She struck up conversations with other travelers, joined guided tours, and discovered she was braver and more adventurous than she'd remembered. She ate alone in restaurants without feeling self-conscious, navigated foreign cities with confidence, and took hundreds of photos of things that delighted her. David picked her up from the airport when she returned, and she found herself genuinely excited to see him. "You look amazing," he said, taking her bags. "Traveling agrees with you." "I feel amazing. I can't believe I waited so long to do that." "Well, now you know you can do anything. What's next on your adventure list?" They drove through the familiar streets of her hometown, and Zara realized how much she'd grown in just a month. The woman who'd left for Europe was different from the one who'd returned. More confident, more sure of herself, more aware of her own capabilities. At home, she found her house exactly as she'd left it, but it felt different somehow. Smaller, maybe, or just less significant. It was still her sanctuary, but it was no longer her whole world. She was unpacking when her phone rang. Carmen's name appeared on the screen. "Welcome home, world traveler. How was it?" "Incredible. Life-changing. I want to go back already." "And how's the professor?" Zara smiled. "David's good. Really good. We're taking things slow, but I think there might be something real there." "I'm so happy for you. You deserve someone who treats you right." After they hung up, Zara looked through the photos on her phone from the trip. In every single one where she appeared, she was smiling genuinely, her eyes bright with joy and curiosity. She looked like a woman who was fully alive, fully engaged with the world around her. She thought about Robert, wondered what he was doing, how his life had turned out after their divorce. The last she'd heard, he was still working at the same accounting firm, though he'd never gotten the promotion he'd been expecting. Jenna had moved to another city for a fresh start. As far as Zara knew, they weren't together anymore. But their outcomes weren't her concern. Her focus was on her own future, her own happiness, her own adventures yet to come. That night, David took her to dinner at a restaurant that had opened while she was away. Over wine and pasta, she told him about her travels, showing him photos and sharing stories that made him laugh. "I have something to tell you," he said as they shared dessert. Zara felt a moment of anxiety. In her experience, "I have something to tell you" rarely preceded good news. "I've been offered a sabbatical," David continued. "A year in London doing research at the British Library. I wasn't sure if I was going to take it, but after hearing about your trip—" "You should take it," Zara said immediately. "That sounds like an amazing opportunity. The thing is, I'd want you to come with me. Not permanently, maybe just for a few months. You could take a leave of absence from the library, we could get a flat together, explore Europe properly." Zara stared at him, processing the invitation. 6 months ago, such a suggestion would have terrified her. The old Zara would have found a dozen reasons why it was impractical or impossible. But the new Zara, the woman who'd just spent a month navigating foreign countries on her own, felt a thrill of excitement at the possibility. "That's a big step," she said carefully. "We've only been dating for a few months." "I know. And if it's too much too soon, I understand. But Zara, I think we could have something really special together. And life's too short to not take chances on things that might be wonderful." She looked across the table at this kind, intelligent man who was offering her adventure and partnership in equal measure. She thought about the woman she'd been when she was married to Robert. Small, careful, always putting someone else's needs before her own. And she thought about the woman she was becoming, brave, independent, open to possibilities. "Ask me again in 6 months," she said finally. "After we've had more time to see where this goes." David smiled and she saw relief in his eyes. "That sounds perfect. No pressure, just possibility." "Just possibility," she agreed. As they walked to his car, Zara felt a deep sense of contentment. Her life was full of potential now, full of choices and opportunities she was free to pursue. She didn't know exactly what the future held, but for the first time in years she was excited to find out. The woman who had discovered her husband's betrayal 8 months ago felt like a stranger now. That woman had been broken by Robert's lies, devastated by the destruction of her marriage. This woman, the one walking hand in hand with a man who respected and cherished her, had been forged by that fire into someone stronger and more complete. Robert had thought he was destroying her life when he chose his affair over their marriage. Instead, he'd given her the greatest gift possible, the chance to discover who she really was when she wasn't trying to be someone else's ideal wife. And who she was, it turned out, was magnificent. 1 year after her divorce was finalized, Zara stood in front of her bathroom mirror, applying lipstick for her date with David. They'd been together for over a year now, and what had started as casual dating had evolved into something deeper and more meaningful than either of them had expected. Tonight was special. David was cooking dinner for her at his house, something he'd been promising to do for weeks. She was looking forward to a quiet evening together, just the two of them. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nina. "How's it going with the professor? Still planning to move to London with him?" Zara smiled as she typed back, "We're talking about it seriously now. I might take a year-long leave of absence from the library." The response came immediately, "OMG yes. Do it. You only live once." David had brought up the London opportunity several more times over the past few months, always careful not to pressure her but making it clear the invitation stood. Zara had been seriously considering it, especially after her supervisor had mentioned that the library would hold her position for up to a year if she wanted to take extended leave. She was still getting ready when her doorbell rang. Through the peephole, she saw a delivery person holding a large bouquet of flowers. She opened the door, expecting them to be from David, but the card attached made her heart skip a beat. "I miss you every day. I'll never stop hoping you'll give us another chance. Robert." Zara stared at the flowers, feeling a mixture of irritation and sadness. It had been over a year since their divorce and Robert still occasionally reached out with calls, texts, or gestures like this. She'd stopped responding months ago, but he apparently hadn't gotten the message. She was about to throw the flowers in the trash when her phone rang. David's name appeared on the screen. "Hey," she answered. "I was just about to leave. Actually, I have some bad news. My youngest daughter showed up unexpectedly. She had a fight with her mom and drove down from college. Rain check on dinner? Of course. Family comes first. You're amazing. This is why I'm crazy about you, you know?" After they hung up, Zara found herself at loose ends for the evening. She'd been looking forward to seeing David, and the appearance of Robert's flowers had stirred up emotions she thought she'd moved past. She decided to call Carmen and see if she wanted to grab dinner and a movie. As she was looking up theater times, her doorbell rang again. This time it was Robert himself standing on her porch. "Hello, Zara. What are you doing here, Robert? I was hoping we could talk. Did you get the flowers?" "I got them. I also got your message. The answer is still no. Can I come in? Just for a few minutes?" Zara almost said no automatically, but something in his appearance stopped her. He looked tired, older, and there was a vulnerability in his expression she'd rarely seen before. "5 minutes," she said, stepping aside to let him in. Robert walked into the living room and looked around. Zara had redecorated after the divorce, replacing their shared furniture with pieces that reflected her own taste. The space was brighter now, more colorful, filled with books and plants and photos from her travels. "The house looks good," he said. "Different but good." "Thank you. What did you want to talk about?" Robert sat heavily on her couch, running his hands through his hair. "I made the biggest mistake of my life when I cheated on you. I know I've said that before, but I need you to know I mean it." "I believe you do mean it. But that doesn't change anything. I've been going to therapy," he continued, "trying to figure out why I sabotaged the best thing in my life. Dr. Martinez says I was probably afraid of intimacy, that I created drama and chaos because I didn't know how to handle genuine love and commitment." Zara sat down across from him, maintaining distance but willing to listen. That's good, Robert. I'm glad you're getting help. I want to be the man you deserved. I want to prove to you that I've changed. You don't need to prove anything to me. You need to change for yourself. But if I do change, really change, would you consider giving us another chance? Zara looked at her ex-husband, this man she'd loved for 12 years, and felt a deep sadness for what they'd lost. But she also felt something else, complete certainty about her answer. No, she said gently. I wouldn't. Robert's face crumpled. Even if I could prove I'm different? Even then. Robert, what we had is over. Not just because of the affair, but because I'm a different person now than I was when we were married. You seem the same to me. I'm not though. I'm stronger, more independent, more sure of what I want and need. I've built a life I love, and I won't go backward to accommodate someone who had the chance to love me properly and chose not to. Robert was quiet for a long moment. Are you seeing someone? Zara hesitated, then decided honesty was fairest. Yes, I am. Is it serious? It's getting there. Do you love him? The question caught her off guard. Did she love David? She cared about him deeply, enjoyed his company, felt excited about their future possibilities. But love? I don't know yet, she said honestly. But I know I'm happy with him in a way I wasn't with you, even in our good times. What's different about him? He sees me as a complete person, not as an extension of himself. He encourages my independence instead of taking it for granted. He makes me feel valued and appreciated, not like I'm lucky to have his attention. Robert winced. I did make you feel that way, didn't I? You did. Not intentionally, maybe, but consistently. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all of it. Zara felt tears prick her eyes, not for the loss of their marriage but for the pain they'd both endured getting to this point. I forgive you, she said, and realized she meant it completely. I forgive you for the affair, for the lies, for taking me for granted. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. We're not the same people we were when we got married, and we're not compatible anymore. Robert stood up slowly, looking defeated but also, somehow, relieved. I guess I needed to hear you say it clearly. I've been holding on to hope for so long. You deserve to be happy too, Robert. But not with me. That chapter of our lives is closed. He nodded, heading toward the door. For what it's worth, I'm glad you found someone who makes you happy. You deserve that. After he left, Zara sat in her quiet house, processing the conversation. She felt sad but also free, as if she'd finally closed a door that had been left slightly ajar for too long. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. Crisis averted. Daughter's feeling better. Too late for dinner, but want to come over for a glass of wine and some conversation? On my way, she typed back. David's house was warm and welcoming, filled with books and comfortable furniture and the smell of the dinner he'd started cooking before his daughter arrived. He met her at the door with a glass of wine and a soft kiss. Everything okay? He asked, studying her face. You look a little emotional. Robert came by tonight. Wanted to try to reconcile. David's expression grew serious. How do you feel about that? Completely sure that it's not what I want. I told him no, definitively this time. Good. I mean, not good that he put you in that position, but good that you're sure about your feelings. They settled on his couch, Zara curled against his side. The comfortable intimacy felt like everything her marriage to Robert had lacked. Easy, natural, unforced. David, she said quietly. I've been thinking about London. About your sabbatical. And? I want to go with you. I want to take that leap. He pulled back to look at her face. Are you sure? I don't want you to feel pressured. I'm sure. Tonight made me realize that I'm ready to stop looking backward and start building something new. With you. David's smile was radiant. I was hoping you'd say that. I already started looking at flats for us. Already? That was presumptuous. That was optimistic. There's a difference. They spent the rest of the evening making plans, talking about everything they wanted to see and do during their year in London. Zara felt giddy with excitement about the adventure ahead of them. Later, as she drove home through the quiet streets of her hometown, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this point. A year and a half ago, she'd been a woman whose world had collapsed when she discovered her husband's betrayal. Tonight, she was a woman planning to move to London with a man who loved and respected her. The transformation hadn't been easy or quick. There had been dark days, moments of doubt, times when she'd wondered if she'd ever feel whole again. But she'd done the work. The emotional work, the practical work, the hard work of rebuilding herself from the ground up. And now she was reaping the rewards. A job she loved, friendships that sustained her, a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine affection, and adventures that stretched far beyond the safe, small world she'd once inhabited. Robert had thought he was choosing excitement and passion when he'd begun his affair with Jenna. What he'd actually chosen was the destruction of something real and valuable in favor of something temporary and shallow. Zara had chosen differently. She'd chosen growth over safety, adventure over comfort, self-respect over familiar dysfunction. And her choices had led her to a life richer and more fulfilling than anything she'd ever imagined possible. As she pulled into her driveway, she looked at her house, her sanctuary, her home base, her launching pad for whatever came next. Tomorrow she would start making arrangements for her year in London. She would talk to her supervisor about extended leave, research what she needed to do about her house, begin the exciting process of planning for the biggest adventure of her life. But tonight, she would simply savor the contentment of a woman who had faced her worst fears and emerged stronger on the other side. 6 months later, Zara stood at the window of the flat she shared with David in South Kensington, watching London bustle to life in the early morning light. She had a cup of tea in her hands. She'd developed a proper appreciation for afternoon tea since moving to England, and a smile on her face that had become her default expression. Life in London had exceeded all her expectations. She'd taken a part-time position at the British Library, working with their special collections while David conducted his research. They spent their evenings exploring the city, their weekends taking the train to other parts of England, their days off planning longer trips to Scotland, Ireland, and the continent. "Morning, beautiful," David said, wrapping his arms around her from behind and kissing the top of her head. "Morning. Sleep well?" "Better than I have in years. Something about this city agrees with me." "Just the city?" Zara teased. "Well, the company doesn't hurt either." They'd settled into domestic routines that felt natural and comfortable. David cooked breakfast most mornings while Zara got ready for work. She handled the grocery shopping and meal planning, which she discovered she actually enjoyed when it wasn't taken for granted. They split household chores without negotiation or resentment, both contributing equally to their shared life. It was everything her marriage to Robert hadn't been: balanced, respectful, full of genuine partnership. "I have news," David said as they sat down to breakfast. "Good news or bad news?" "Good news, I think. The department head called yesterday. They're so pleased with my research here that they're asking if I'd consider extending my sabbatical for another year." Zara felt a flutter of excitement. "And you want to?" "I want to if you want to. This only works if we're both happy." She looked around their cozy flat, thought about the life they'd built together in London, considered all the places they still wanted to explore. "I'd love to stay another year," she said. "I'll need to talk to Margaret about extending my leave, but I think she'll be supportive." "There's more," David said, looking slightly nervous. "The extension would come with an opportunity to teach a few classes at University College London. It would mean more money, more stability, a chance to really establish myself here if I wanted to." "That sounds wonderful. What's making you nervous about it?" David took her hands across the breakfast table. "Because accepting it would mean committing to something more serious between us. We'd be building a life together, not just having an adventure." Zara's heart began to beat faster. "And how do you feel about that?" "I feel like I'm falling in love with you more every day. I feel like what we have is worth building something permanent around." The words hung in the air between them, full of possibility and promise. Zara looked at this man who had become so important to her, who treated her with consistent kindness and respect, who made her laugh and encouraged her dreams and never made her feel like she was asking for too much. "I love you too," she said, surprising herself with how easy the words were to say. "I love the life we've built together and I want to see where it goes." David's smile was brilliant. "Really? Really? Let's stay in London. Let's see what happens when we stop calling this an adventure and start calling it home." He leaned across the table to kiss her, and Zara felt a completeness she'd never experienced before. This was what love was supposed to feel like: safe but exciting, comfortable but not complacent, built on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than need or habit. Later that day, while David was at the library, Zara walked through Hyde Park to her favorite spot by the Serpentine. She'd come here often during her first weeks in London, when everything felt new and slightly overwhelming. Now it felt like a place where she came to think and process important moments. She pulled out her phone and called Nina. "Please tell me you're calling with good news about the professor," Nina said by way of greeting. "We're extending our time in London by another year. And I told him I love him. Finally. I was wondering when you'd admit what everyone else could see months ago. Was it that obvious?" Honey, you light up like a Christmas tree every time you talk about him. Even through video calls from 3,000 miles away, it was obvious you were head over heels. They talked for another 20 minutes, Nina bringing her up to date on hometown gossip and Zara sharing stories about her London adventures. As they were about to hang up, Nina mentioned something that made Zara's heart skip. Oh, by the way, Robert got engaged. What? Yeah, to some woman he met through his therapist's office. Apparently, she's a social worker, closer to his age, has kids from her first marriage. Carmen heard they're planning a small wedding in the spring. Zara processed this information, waiting for the jealousy or sadness she thought might come. Instead she felt nothing. Relief, maybe, that Robert had found someone and wouldn't be sending her flowers or showing up at her door anymore. I'm glad, she said and meant it. He deserves to be happy. You're amazing, you know that? Most ex-wives would have at least a little bitterness. I wasted too much energy on bitterness already. I'm just grateful his story and mine led us both to better places. After they hung up, Zara sat by the water for a while longer, reflecting on how much her life had changed. 2 years ago, she'd been a woman whose identity was entirely wrapped up in being someone's wife. Today, she was a woman living in one of the world's great cities, pursuing work she was passionate about, in love with someone who valued her independence as much as he cherished their partnership. The woman who had discovered her husband's affair felt like someone from another lifetime. That woman had been broken by betrayal, devastated by the destruction of her carefully ordered world. This woman had been forged by fire into someone stronger, braver, more authentically herself. Robert's betrayal had been the worst thing that ever happened to her. That evening, she and David had dinner at a small restaurant in Covent Garden they'd been wanting to try. Over wine and conversation, she told him about Nina's call and Robert's engagement. How do you feel about it? David asked, watching her face carefully. Happy for him, mostly. And grateful that he's moved on so I don't have to worry about him trying to restart something that's been over for a long time. No regrets. None. If I hadn't left that marriage, I never would have found you. I never would have discovered who I am when I'm not trying to be someone else's idea of the perfect wife. And who are you? David asked, smiling. Zara considered the question. I'm someone who takes chances. Someone who speaks up for herself. Someone who knows her own worth and doesn't settle for less than she deserves. I love all of those things about you. Good, because that's who you're stuck with. I can think of worse fates. They walked home through London's glittering streets, hand in hand, talking about their plans for the weekend, for the extended year ahead, for the future they were building together one day at a time. As they climbed the stairs to their flat, Zara felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her here. She'd lost a marriage that had been slowly dying anyway, but she'd gained herself. She'd endured betrayal and heartbreak, but they'd taught her resilience and strength she'd never known she possessed. Most importantly, she'd learned that happiness wasn't something that happened to you or something someone else gave you. It was something you created for yourself through choices and courage and the willingness to keep growing even when growth was painful. Robert had thought he was choosing excitement when he'd chosen his affair over their marriage. What he'd actually chosen was destruction and drama and the shallow satisfaction of immediate gratification. Zara had chosen differently at every turn. She'd chosen dignity over drama, growth over revenge, adventure over safety, love over fear. And her choices had led her to a life more beautiful and fulfilling than anything she'd ever dared to dream. As she fell asleep that night in David's arms in their London flat, surrounded by the life they'd built together, Zara smiled. She'd started this journey as a woman whose world had collapsed around her. She was ending it as a woman whose world was infinite with possibility. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed her had ultimately saved her. And for that she would always be grateful. The last betrayal had led to the first day of her real life. And her real life was magnificent.